Welcome back, everybody, to another video. Today we're doing a kind of a different video, not actually movie related, but video game related. I kind of thought of this idea just because I never really think I made one of these videos before, and so I've decided that I'm going to rank every Call of Duty game. Now, I'm not including like the PS Vita spin-off or anything like that, just all the mainline titles, including the only mobile game and Warzone 1 and 2. Again, this is just my personal opinion. It's not the correct list or anything like that, but just as a frame of reference for what kind of era I grew up with, I mostly, I was around the age of like 12 to 13 when like Modern Warfare 2 and like Modern Warfare 3 were coming out. I was around that age, so I kind of grew up playing these games. So yeah, we're gonna rank them here for you guys. And before we get into this, if you guys are new here, consider hitting that subscribe button and letting me know that you guys like the content that we're putting out here. And without further ado, let's get into the ranking. And dead last for me is easily Call of Duty Vanguard. It's one of those games I barely played. I don't even think I ever owned the game. I think I played it at one of my friends' houses, and I was like, I don't think I'm ever gonna play this game ever again. I think that it was just not good in any way. The campaign felt the most generic and boring it's ever been, and the multiplayer had guns that felt like they did nothing. Not to mention, it was one of the most under talked about games when it came out. I mean, it's a Call of Duty game, and usually people talk about it for a good amount of time, but this one just did not receive the same love and attention. Probably because it just felt like they rushed it out, and it didn't really, they didn't really promote it that much, and it was just another Call of Duty World War II game, which we had already had a couple years ago, and it didn't look much different than that. So that's why it comes in dead last for me. Coming in at number 21, this might surprise some of you, but I actually have Warzone 2.0. It's not a big surprise that I am not a fan of Warzone. I think that it quite literally ruined the Call of Duty formula, and now a lot of people only see Call of Duty as a battle royale, and that just it breaks my heart because I didn't grow up with that kind of Call of Duty. I grew up, with the very like the multiplayer stuff and the zombie stuff, and you don't get as many people playing zombies anymore, especially because of Warzone 2.0. And I just feel like it's not true to what Call of Duty is, and it feels like they're just tacking the battle royale formula onto a game that doesn't need to be on Call of Duty, and Call of Duty can stand on its own without being a battle royale. But even so, the new update that they made with 2.0, it feels much more bland, and it just feels like there's just not something to be excited about in the game. And I tried playing it for a while, but I couldn't get into it. So that's why it comes in at number 21 for me. Coming in at number 20 is Call of Duty 3. So these are probably the games that I haven't played the most of, only because they're the first 3 Call of Duty games ever. Funny enough, the first time I ever played this game was on the Wii. If you guys remember, they had like the original Call of Duty trilogy on the Wii. And but I obviously have played them like with an actual controller. But this game isn't, I don't want to say it's horrible. It's just that there's not a lot going on necessarily. It's just a campaign, and the multiplayer was very basic at the time. And that's the worst thing about this game, is that it's one of the first Call of Duty games, so it doesn't have that backing and that experience that games like Modern Warfare 2 does, and all these other multiplayer games. They were just figuring out how to do this kind of stuff, so it's not quite there yet. So that's why it comes in at number 20 for me. At number 19, we have the first ever Call of Duty. This is a game that really revolutionized first-person shooters, and even at the time, a first-person shooter was very not common. I don't even know if the first Halo game was even out yet. I want to say that it wasn't, but definitely leave a comment if I misread that or whatever. But I've played the first Call of Duty game, and the campaign is all right, but the game itself just, again, my biggest issue with these is that it's not really necessarily an issue, but it's more of the fact that these were the first Call of Duty games, and as much as I'm so grateful for them because they gave us Call of Duty as a franchise, these games were not that good, and I'm so glad they continued to make them. So that's why the original Call of Duty comes in at number 19. And at number 18, we have Call of Duty 2, ending out the original Call of Duty trilogy. Definitely the best of this trilogy because it had a campaign that I found really enjoyable. And that was the best thing about this one. For me, it definitely had the most enjoyable campaign. And those were kind of what those games were all about anyway at that time. Because they didn't have zombies yet, obviously. They didn't really have the best multiplayer. So, for the time being, it was really, it was special. And I guess that's really all there is to say about that original Call of Duty trilogy, other than the fact that, like, they were good games for their time, but they will never beat a lot of the Call of Duty games on this list. So that's why Call of Duty 2 comes in at number 18. And at number 17, we have the first ever Warzone. Again, we kind of were talking about this earlier with Warzone 2.0, but I'm just not a fan of the whole Warzone idea. And this was the one that started it all, and I still don't even have it that high on my list. The only reason I have it higher than Warzone 2.0 is because the map was at least decent, and I give them kudos for, trying to come up with a different idea. But it just doesn't work for me. I don't think that Call of Duty works as a battle royale. I think that it works better with, not this big open map thing. I just don't like the way that they did that. I think that Call of Duty is about customizing your loadout and just hopping in and getting in and then dying and dying and dying and dying and dying and learning and just kind of going about it that way, other than like trying to survive. And for me, that's what this became about, and I just don't think that it fits the Call of Duty formula. So that's why it comes in at number 17 for me. And at number 16, we have Call of Duty Mobile. This was definitely a weird one when I was thinking about it and when it first came out. And especially now, I think it's still going, yeah, it still goes on. And it's not a bad game. It actually has pretty decent controls. Obviously, it doesn't have a campaign, it's just multiplayer. But, it does okay for itself. It knows its place, and it knows that it's not trying to be the best Call of Duty. But like, if you're in the mood to play Call of Duty and you're not at home, here you go. So that's why it comes in at number 16 for me. And at number 15, we have Call of Duty Black Ops 4. This was one of those games that when it was first teased, I was super excited for. Because I just think that the Call of Duty Black Ops series in general is so well done. And Black Ops 1 was awesome, Black Ops 2 was awesome, and Black Ops 3 was amazing. And they were all fantastic. And when Black Ops 4 was announced, I'm like, oh my god, we're getting another Call of Duty Black Ops game. And then I remember it was like 3 months before the game came out, they announced that it was not gonna have a campaign. And I just remember being so upset beyond belief. I thought this was one of the worst decisions they ever made for the Call of Duty franchise. Especially for this game, because the Call of Duty Black Ops series had such solid campaigns, and it felt like the perfect opportunity to regain some of their fans back with a great campaign. And they decided that this was going to be probably the first and only mainline Call of Duty game that wasn't going to have a campaign, which was just wild to me. And what did they end up replacing it with? Well, the multiplayer was okay. The multiplayer had some decent maps, but the big thing here was that they actually introduced the Battle Royale, which later became Warzone. But here, I forget what it was called, but that's besides the point. It was so focused on the Battle Royale that they forgot what, like, I don't want to say, but they forgot what a good Call of Duty can be like. The one good thing I will say about this game is that, like, the specialists and the guns were pretty decent. I think that, like, the HUD and everything that they did with that was pretty good. I just think that as far as, like, the game itself goes and entertainment value, they could have done a lot better. And also, the zombies, I give them kudos for coming up with a new story, but the new system and the way that they did everything was much too complicated. I think for anyone that used to be a fan of zombies, so that kind of turned a lot of people away from this, like, new generation of zombies that they were trying to do. So that's why it comes in at number 15 for me. And at number 14, we have Call of Duty World War II. This is one of those games where when the first trailer came out for the game, I was super excited. I remember pre-ordering, I got all the merch for it, the hat, every little thing that they had for it, because the idea of having a Call of Duty game set in the World War II era, and then with, like, current gen graphics, awesome. I could not wait. And then I remember it was like the demo, the little, like, demo they had for everyone right before the game came out for the multiplayer, and I played it like crazy, and I started to notice I just wasn't a fan of the guns. For me, I was expecting guns that felt like, you know, because World War II was the golden age of, you know, military weapons and all this stuff, and I just felt like the guns didn't live up to that. I thought that the maps were decent, but again, the multiplayer really let me down, I felt like. The zombies, I felt like, was horrible. I did not like the zombies mode at all. I thought it was very just boring, and just didn't feel like true zombies to me. It didn't feel right. The only thing I would say that really won me over was the campaign. I thought the campaign was really well done, and it had a lot of great, like, just a lot of, like, action scenes, and, like, they kind of came up with this whole new system of, like, you could, like, toss buddy packs to your buddies and, like, communicate on the field with your other teammates, even though they weren't real, they were just NPCs. But I thought that was a really neat idea, and there were a couple missions in that which were really neat. But overall, I was somewhat disappointed, but I wouldn't say that it was a total loss, because I said the multiplayer wasn't a total bust. It just kind of, the guns weren't there for me. But other than that, the game was somewhat decent. So that's why it comes in at number 14 for me. And at number 13, we have Call of Duty Advanced Warfare. I know a lot of you are going to be surprised that I put it above World War II, but here's my reasoning behind that. So I remember this was the first ever Call of Duty, really besides Black Ops 2, that was, like, future based. This was like jetpacks and all of this stuff, and it just felt like, honestly, at the time, it felt like a breath of fresh air. They were trying something new. It just wasn't about the current era. They were doing something new with Call of Duty, and I can appreciate that. I remember playing the survival mode, and I did enjoy the survival mode, actually. I think that the worst part about this game was the multiplayer. I think that some of the maps could have been better. I don't think that they were all bad. I think there were some decent maps, but I definitely think that there could have been better ones. I enjoyed the guns a lot. I know that's not very popular, but I enjoyed the guns in this game, again, because we were getting a different take on what Call of Duty, like, was. They were you know, let's put Call of Duty in the future for the first time, and that just felt like such a good concept to me that I was excited. And also, I remember the campaign was probably one of my favorite campaigns that Call of Duty's ever done, besides, like, the original ones. Just because I thought that the main villain was good, and that the technology little things that you use. I remember there was this bomb where you would throw it, and it would light up the threats, like temporarily for, like, 30 seconds. And I just thought that idea was insane. And I thought it was very innovative and fun, so that's why Call of Duty Advanced Warfare comes at number 13 for me. And at number 12, we have Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2019 version. So, I remember kind of very clearly when this first came out that a lot of people were excited because I believe it was Price was returning in the campaign. And the campaign was pretty decent. Definitely one of the highlights was like sneaking into that one house and like you have to like go through like the stairs and all that kind of stuff. And the game itself was good. But this was the game I believe that introduced Warzone, and it shows because to me the multiplayer it wasn't bad. The multiplayer wasn't bad, but it wasn't good either. It just kind of felt like the most average Call of Duty multiplayer. And it's not, again, that's not necessarily an insult or a compliment. It's just kind of like, you know, when you play a Call of Duty multiplayer, you expect great things, and I wouldn't say that it was necessarily bad because nothing like stuck out that it was bad, but it was just kind of like, okay, yeah, all right. And I didn't really feel like any kind of feeling out of it. It just was kind of like, yeah, I'm playing Call of Duty, but it didn't feel like I was like having much fun. It just felt like I was doing a job more than you know what I mean? So that's why it comes in at number 12 for me. Coming in at number 11, we have the most recent Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2 2022 edition. So this game, I guess I would say I was definitely excited for. I was excited for the fact that mostly that the campaign looked really, really promising. And that the multiplayer actually looked pretty decent. And I wouldn't, again, it's kind of like the whole deal with Modern Warfare, the first one, except that I think that the campaign was slightly better in this game. I remember there was a mission in this game where you don't have a gun, you get captured. And like, you have to like survive and like craft, I think you end up crafting things and like making your way out and like crafting like a shiv, and you have to like fight off soldiers and stuff. Like, I thought that part was really cool. It just felt like a kind of new, innovative way on take on the campaign. And I had a lot of fun with it. But I mean, they tried to do Warzone 2.0 with this game. I think that it's probably a mistake. I'm not a fan of Warzone, and I'm sure we're gonna get many more types of Warzone that I will not be a fan of. But yeah, that's why Modern Warfare 2 comes in at number 11 for me. And at our number 10 spot, I have Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. I know a lot of people aren't crazy about this game. I think it honestly does get a lot more flack than it deserves, because it did a lot of things right. Let's just kind of go through it. So the campaign for this game, I thought, was pretty good. I know it was kind of weird because you get to choose your mission and like how you did things. And I know people weren't necessarily a big fan of that. I personally enjoyed it. I thought that the missions were fun. I thought that the main story was fun. I thought that I loved the characters in this game and like the emotion and the soundtrack, the da 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 da, like that whole thing was great. And then I kind of wish we got like more campaign. Like I would have loved an Infinite Warfare 2 if I'm being honest. But that's besides the point. The multiplayer itself, definitely the worst part about this game. And I don't even think that the multiplayer is necessarily as bad as everyone says it is, because I think that the guns in this game were fantastic. It felt like we had a wide range of guns that felt good to use. I think that the biggest issue that people had with this game were the maps, and that some of them were just maybe a little too big or just didn't feel right. And I can understand that. I think that some of the maps could have been better. But I think by this point, I think we had like 3 futuristic Call of Duty games, and people were kind of getting tired of that futuristic style. And I think that's why at the time that it came out that people weren't crazy about it. But looking back, it's still a solid Call of Duty game in my opinion. And then the final thing I want to talk about with that game was the zombies, which was probably, for me, the best part of the whole game, because it was just, they just decided to finally have fun with the Call of Duty zombies. You know, I thought that this was one of the better zombie modes that wasn't a part of the main story. I mean, you had, the biggest one was Zombies in Spaceland, where you quite literally get to fight zombies in an 80s kind of setting. And so I just thought that that was really, really cool that they did that, and I thought that it added a lot to just the whole Call of Duty Zombies formula. So that is why Infinite Warfare comes in at number 10. And at number 9, we have Call of Duty Cold War, or Black Ops Cold War, I should say. And so this was definitely one of the more interesting Call of Duties that I think that were announced in recent years, because, you know, it was a whole, again, in the title, name of the title, a whole Call of Duty game based on the Cold War, and it was very secretive and just very kind of like, oh, you know, are you trusting what you're doing? And this was also one of those Call of Duties for the first time that like would let you make your own decisions, and it was very like, very great movement, and honestly the guns were pretty good too, if I'm quite being honest. This was also the first Call of Duty to ever be on the new gen, which was like PS5. I remember this was, I think, the first Call of Duty I ever played on my PlayStation 5, and it looked great, and they had the adaptive triggers, and they had all this kind of stuff, and it played well. It played really well. The one thing that I do, so let's talk about the one bad thing issue that I do have with this game, and that is the zombies, because I think that the zombies was probably, I don't think it was as bad as Black Ops 4, but man, they really dropped the ball, because I think that the gameplay was good. The gameplay was alright, but the story and what they were trying to do with that just did not fit the bill for me. Especially because the characters were so bland. They were just like mercenaries that were dropping in and doing a job, and I didn't like that very much. I thought that was very lazy writing, and I thought that it just did not fit what Zombies is about. Because Zombies is supposed to be about like really good written original characters that have to go after these zombies, and that didn't really happen. But as far as the multiplayer went, we had really good multiplayer maps, and again, the guns were good, and the campaign was pretty good as well. So I'd say that's why Cold War comes in at number 9 for me. And at number 8, we have Call of Duty Ghosts. This is probably one of the most, like, when it first came out, one of the most overhated Call of Duty games ever for no reason. I don't know if it's just because they were trying to change things. I do have a feeling, I think, of what it was, and I think that was the fact that, like, a lot of these maps, there's one map in particular, which was the big castle map, and it was just huge. And I know a lot of people did not like, they didn't like the maps, and that was a big drawback, because Call of Duty, like, 50% of the fan base is at least the multiplayer, and when you don't have good maps, people don't want to play the multiplayer. But aside from that, the guns felt good to use. The campaign was probably one of the most cool campaigns we've ever gotten, with the first use of, like, you could, like, be a dog, and you would, like, go throughout these things. And again, I thought that the campaign was really well done. Even the opening to the campaign was very, like, different from the rest of the Call of Duty games, and I would love to, you know, eventually in the future, get a Call of Duty Ghost 2. So that's why it comes in at number 8 for me. And at number 7, we have Call of Duty World at War, the first Call of Duty to ever introduce zombies. And what a way, you know, this game was incredible. At the time, Call of Duty zombies wasn't even a thing. And when this game first came out and they told us, okay, there's going to be a mode where you can fight zombies, what a great idea. And little did we know, it would become one of the greatest parts of Call of Duty ever. I mean, I'd say that the zombies is at least 30% of the player base, at least. So, I mean, it just, because of that pure fact, and not only that, but because it actually had a pretty decent multiplayer, and the campaign was very well done, it's earned it's earned its place as one of my favorite Call of Duty games, so that's why it comes in at number 7 on my list. And at number 6, we have Call of Duty Modern Warfare, one of the ones that kicked it all off with probably one of the best campaigns ever in a Call of Duty game, especially the mission where you're the sniper rifle by the Ferris wheel, and that mission, I remember as a kid, had me so tense that like I could not physically comprehend what was going on around me at the time, that I was only focused on that. And the multiplayer honestly was one of the first like Call of Duty multiplayers that like really stuck with people, and was one of the most played multiplayers of all time. It really like set the bar for what a Call of Duty multiplayer could be like. And I feel like after that came out, a lot of the Call of Duty games took the roots from that game and then put their own spin on it, but always trying to keep the roots of like what Modern Warfare did. And for me, it was just so important for the Call of Duty franchise that I had to put it at my number 6 spot. At number 5, we have Call of Duty Black Ops. I don't know if some people will be upset that I have it this low, but I don't think it's that low considering that we're at number 5, and there's definitely a couple of more Call of Duty games. Anyway, this was probably the introduction of one of the best Call of Duty franchises or series of all time. With the Black Ops games, this is where zombies really just took off. Because of course we got the introduction in World at War, but once Black Ops hit, that became Black Ops' signature trademark. And, you know, it just became so revolutionary. I remember as a kid, as a kid being, oh my god, like Call of Duty Black Ops this and Call of Duty Black Ops that. And that was the only thing you ever heard, like, when it came to, like, video games and, like, shooters. It was, like, Call of Duty Black Ops Zombies and the multiplayer. And not only that, but the campaign, if you go back and you play the campaign for the first Black Ops, it's actually a pretty solid campaign. Not quite as solid as some of these others that are coming up, but pretty good. And the multiplayer was very well done as well. It had some of the best maps. A lot of those highlights that you see now are like either from that or Modern Warfare 2. So again, definitely one of the best Call of Duty games of all time. So that's why it comes in at my number 5. At number 4, we have Modern Warfare 3. The only reason I have this above Black Ops is because this is more of a personal thing for me. And I just remember so much as a kid. This was probably the Call of Duty that I played most, just because I think that this had some of the best multiplayer maps. I remember loving the maps on this game. I remember me and my friends, we used to play like Michael Myers on the maps. We would, and even like the survival mode on this was just, everything about this game was solid. The modes were solid, the campaign was solid, especially with like the defeat of Makarov, and then like just that ending to the original Modern Warfare trilogy. It ended it perfectly, and just again, it's one of the most more classic Call of Duty games, and it got the job done, and it did more than what was asked of it. And the multiplayer guns felt good to use. Everything felt like very solid, and I can never talk about how much I loved the multiplayer maps in this game, because all of them were just such solid maps. And now, as we enter my top 3, we have Black Ops 3. Probably my most played Call of Duty game ever. I bought this game on release day, and all I could remember thinking was, have mercy, this game is just a masterpiece already. Let's talk about the one bad thing about this game, and I wouldn't even say that it's a bad thing. The campaign for this game can get a little confusing, I get that. And the main villain isn't like necessarily a person, it's just more of like an entity. But for me personally, I do enjoy the Black Ops 3 campaign for what it is. But I will say that there's definitely better campaigns out there. Okay, now that we're done talking about that, let's talk about everything else and how great it is. All the multiplayer maps in this game are solid. There's one or two that are like, but they're not bad. They're just, But the rest of the multiplayer maps, fantastic. And I could not talk about this game without talking about the weapons. The weapons in this game are just, honestly, some of the best, like, not only customizable and, like, camos and that kind of stuff, but just weapons in general. This game killed it. Every gun, especially, like, guns like the Locust and, like, the VMP and just the Kuda and everything just felt so solid as guns. Like, when you shot those guns, I mean, they just felt good. It felt good to shoot. The multiplayer was insane. You know, the specialists. I think this was the first game that ever introduced specialists. I thought that was a really neat concept. And then you have the zombies. And just, I mean, before we even got Chronicles, which is, I'll get to that in a second, you already had Shadows of Evil, the Giant, my favorite personal zombies map, Der Eisendrache, probably my favorite zombies map ever, just because I love the idea of the bows, I love the location, I love the Easter eggs that you can do on that map. I just think that that map is like pure Call of Duty zombies, and I have countless hours playing that with friends and trying to hit the trick shot with the fire bow, and I just love that so much. And then you have, you know, Revelation and Gorod Krovi and stuff like that, and then you already have that, and then they added Zombie Chronicles, which was like, why do I need to play any other zombies mode? The only really thing, like Mob of the Dead, stuff like that, Black Ops 3 killed it. And then they, you know, a lot of people say they don't like gobblegums. Just don't use gobblegums. It's that simple. Don't use the gobblegums. You had a choice. You didn't have to use them. So, definitely for me, one of the best Call of Duties of all time. So that's why it comes in at number 3 for me. And at number 2, we have Modern Warfare 2. One of the best Call of Duty games of all time. Definitely the best Call of Duty campaign of all time. Between just how it plays out. And one of my favorite parts of the whole campaign is when you have to like go in between like the fast food restaurants and like the Burger Town, you're trying to like kill everyone. Just fantastic. You have such a, the gameplay in that part is just, it's pure warfare, and that's what it is. It's just pure warfare, and you're having so much fun playing it, and it's just one of the best. And the multiplayer, one of the best as well, had maps like Rust, and I mean the guns, and you play that game and you just know that you're in for a great time. And then you also have one of the most iconic villains of all time really like stepping up here with Makarov. And you know, you have the airport scene and this game just really became one of the overall high arching Hall of Famer Call of Duty games of all time. So I had to put it in my top 3, but that's why this game comes at my number 2 for me. And my favorite Call of Duty of all time has got to be Black Ops 2. This just laid out so much groundwork for the games to come, and not only did it lay the groundwork, but it made such a fantastic experience for the game itself. You had, for the first time, a different looking Nuketown. I mean, the Nuketown in this game was, between this and the third and Black Ops 3, some of my favorite maps of all time. The campaign in this game is so solid. Not quite as good as the Modern Warfare 2 campaign, but definitely solid. But where this game really shines is the zombies and the multiplayer. this is where this game shines. Has probably the best maps out of any Call of Duty game ever. The guns all feel right. And the best thing I can say about the guns in this game is that not only did they feel like they just put in random guns for this game, but all the guns felt so unique to this game specifically. This game, I believe, takes place in 2025, and these guns just feel like guns that literally came out of 2025. Not any time before, not any time after. That time specifically, because they didn't feel too advanced and they didn't feel too old. They all felt just like slightly newer than modern. And it was perfect. The maps were good, and they've even reskinned a lot of maps from this game, so that's how you know the maps are good. And then you have the zombies mode, which, again, this game just obliterated the zombies game with maps like Mob of the Dead, Origins, stuff like that. You already had the groundwork for zombies because they introduced it in World at War, great introduction, and then they laid the groundwork in Black Ops. And then this game, they said, okay, now that we have the groundwork and what we kind of know we want zombies to be, let's just make zombies an incredible experience. And they did that. And they did that while making really cool, like, customizable camos and just all this little intricate stuff and details that they added to the game just made it one of the best Call of Duties of all time. So that's why it comes in at number 1 for me. And yeah, guys, with that said, that is my ranking of every Call of Duty game. I feel free to leave your list down below and let me know what your favorite Call of Duty game is, what your least favorite is, what you would change about my list. But just remember that it is my list. And with that said, guys, I will see you all in the next video. Peace, everybody.